But also on January 1st, the President signed a new piece of legislation, the National Defense Authorization. I'm always pleased because so many of the crowds, matter of fact, all the crowds I speak to know about the National Defense Authorization Act, but also know you didn't learn about it on evening news. You had to get it from some other place to find out how bad it is. But here it is, the Congress delivers to the President this authority to use the military to arrest American citizens and not charge them with anything, deny them an attorney, and put them in a prison. And even on the Senate floor, there were senators say they don't deserve it, prisoners, because they're guilty people, they're terrorists, or they've been associated with. What has happened to the rule of law? These kind of things have to be reversed. That in particular, but I also think that we have to reverse this attitude of the TSA agents at our airports.
Yeah!
The Defense Production Act was written in 1950 and it's been revised several times over the years, and it essentially gives the President declare in an emergency in times of war to nationalize everything. It's a terrible, terrible piece of legislation. It's been invoked partially but never completely. But this, sometimes Congress renews it, other times it's passed, and this time, not correctly obviously, but the President renewed it with an executive order.
Yeah.
But he changed. There have been some times when this bill has been, this law has been, brought up and reestablished. But they do it by saying that they continue the same emergency powers. But guess what? In this executive order, he changed the rules. It isn't under emergencies of war conditions, but in peacetime conditions that he can declare that. I saw a report this week that obviously has to be wrong and can't be correct because it was on the internet. You can't believe a thing you have on the internet. You know. But no, the internet, this article said that the Department of Homeland Security has sent out an order, and this is probably true that they actually have. They sent out an order for 500 million rounds of ammunition.
Yeah.
What do they need all this ammunition for? I thought the police were supposed to be local, not federal. We weren't supposed to have a federal police force. But there have been a lot of things happening with our civil liberties, and of course our economic liberties have been under attack for a long time. We end up with an economic crisis. We end up with a foreign policy of perpetual war, which contributes even further to our bankruptcy. But most of all, it's this undermining of personal liberty in the name of safety. And we were warned about this. We were told if we're willing to give up some of our freedoms for wanting to be safe, that we're going to have neither. You know, a lot of times you hear our president say, well, my job is to make you safe. Well, it'd be good. We have a national defense, I understand that. But the job of the president is to take his oath seriously and obey the Constitution.
Yeah!
Our liberties are constantly being undermined. Even today, you know, if you might, let's say there's a few of you here that think that it'd be worthwhile, whether you do it or not, it doesn't matter, but you might think somebody else should have the right to drink raw milk.
Yeah!
Why should the federal government be involved in making that decision for you? So, I think that all your decisions should be your own, but you have to suffer all the consequences of if you make bad decisions too, but you ought to make your own decisions, not the government.
Yeah!
And when we restore the republic, you'll be able to buy any kind of light bulb you want. You won't have if you're ambitious and you know a little bit about farming and you want to go into the rope business, I'd let you make hemp rope.
Yeah!
respect this principle of states' rights. If a state comes along and says that it is permissible under state law to use marijuana for medical reasons, I'll let you do it. Drugs are dangerous. As a physician, I know about dangerous drugs, but I also know that the most dangerous and the most addictive drugs are prescription drugs.
Yeah!
And also, I know a lot more people die from nicotine cigarettes and alcohol, and yet we haven't been putting people in there for smoking and drinking alcohol. If people do harm to others, yes, they deserve the punishment and they need to be put away if they're killing people and injuring people under the influence. But the whole thing is, if somebody wants to put something into their body that is potentially dangerous, the decision should be made by that individual, but not by the government.
That's right. Yeah!
Respect rather well intellectual curiosity. You can read the books, you can even read about these evil systems of government, these tyrannical governments like communism and the millions of people they killed, but we refute those with better ideas. Even in our religious values, everybody can have their own choice of their religious values or none if they don't want it. So we don't try to tell people what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And there's danger. There's danger in getting off on tangents with religious values as well as intellectual material. But why is it that we assume that there isn't anything that we put into our bodies we can't do it without the permission of the government? That hasn't been that for all our history. Matter of fact, it's very recent that this has come about. So I would say that we should assume responsibility for ourselves and make our own decisions. But I see this as the same decision as economic liberty. I want you not only to have the right ownership to your body to do what your body you want, I want you to be able to do with your money what you want as well.
Yeah!
And the basic principle of this is the understanding where liberty comes from. It doesn't come from our government. Why should they tell us how to use our liberty if they didn't give it to us? If anything, the government's supposed to protect our liberties. But I see liberty coming to us in a natural way or a God-given way. And it comes to us, we have our life and our liberty. But if that is true, shouldn't we have the right to keep the fruits of our labor?
Yeah!
Against this is that somebody, if they're allowed to make up their own decision about their personal habits, they might do some dumb things. And the other argument about economics is, well, if we don't take care of the people, they're not going to be able to take care of themselves, and they're going to be hungry, and they won't have a house, and they won't have medical care, and they have to go on and on. But the whole thing is, it doesn't work like that, because the more the government's involved, the worse those conditions get, whether they're the economic conditions, or look at what the war on drugs has done. The war on drugs has caused more harm than the drugs themselves.
Yeah!
So obviously drugs are very dangerous, but I still believe that these decisions should be made by the individual. Before you know it, they'll be telling us what kind of food we can eat and how much salt we're allowed to have and how much exercise you have to do every day. It'll go on and on. But it should be worth something for us to live in a free society, making our own decisions, becoming the creative people that we're supposed to be. No, everybody wants to become creative and productive, but most people will have a greater incentive to be creative and productive if they can't have a handout.
Yeah!
But others argue that this is an expression that you don't care about your fellow man because he's off to do something that might hurt himself, or you're not a humanitarian and say, oh, well, if you won't have the government being the lender of last resort and don't take care, and nobody's going to take care of the people, then you don't have any humanitarian instincts. But the whole thing is when you expect the government to do it, and people end up starving under those systems and bring us a crisis that we have today, a crisis over our liberty, a crisis in foreign policy, a crisis in our economy. How can they argue the case that they're the humanitarians? I would say that only freedom can deliver the maximum amount of goods and services to the maximum number of people.
Yeah!
This system that we have had since we drifted a long way from our republic, it's closer to pure democracy. As long as you get 51%, your rights become relative. 51% tell you what to do, and therefore they can redistribute wealth until the wealth is gone. But democracy is something that the founders warned us against, because they claimed this would be, it would become very wasteful and it would erode the society, and finally that society would self-destruct. And we're at that point now because the treasury is not there. The treasury is bare, the pie is shrinking, and they're fighting and clawing away at what's left of the pie, and they have forgotten about how wealth is produced. Government does not produce wealth. They do not create wealth. We have to have a system where wealth is once again created.
Yeah!
What happened 100 years ago or so was that people were, enjoying the benefits of a free society, because a free society is very, very productive. And there's great wealth. We were the freest and the wealthiest country ever, but we're not that today because we're the most indebted country ever. So what happened was we concentrated on materialism that are the benefits of a free society. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying the benefits if you earn them. And this is good. Because people are wealthy, we shouldn't condemn it. If they're wealthy because they live off the taxpayer and they have special privileges by the Federal Reserve and they have contracts with the government, that's a different story.
Yeah!
But we concentrated on the wealth redistribution until the wealth was drained, and we forgot about the principles of liberty, and that's what this campaign is all about. And that is what is necessary for us to restore the greatness of America. This is what is necessary to restore the benefits, once again, to be prosperous. But also to restore something called, something that we would say a sense of respect for ourselves, a sense of well-being. Because if a person gets wealthy or taken care of by somebody else, they do not have this sense of self-respect as they do when they earn it themselves. They have to have this incentive to do it, and I believe that it would be a healthy thing for society, in a free society, I think it opens up the door for seeking that thing and those things called virtue and excellence. I think that's what our goals in life ought to be. Some people might not care too much about that, but as long as they lead their life the way they want and not bother anybody else, that's beside the point. But if you want to, seeking virtue and excellence and expanding oneself and being creative is very, very difficult in a totalitarian society, because you spend most of your time just trying to survive and getting around all the government regulations, and surviving because they ruin the economy. So there's a big difference what happens in a free society. But we have been losing it. We have lost this free society, and we have become too dependent on our government to provide all the goods and services. But the experiment, though, was something that is rather new, the experiment in liberty. Liberty is a young idea. Maybe that's why young people like the idea of freedom, because it's a young